My name is Captain Claire Hartley. I am 35 years old. I have been a signals intelligence officer for 11 years, and on a Wednesday morning in April, I was ordered to destroy a hard drive. This was not unusual. Classified data destruction is routine in my work. Drives are wiped or physically destroyed at the end of their operational life cycle. Paperwork is filed, the destruction is logged. It is administrative work dressed in security protocol. I had done it dozens of times. Before every destruction, I run a standard verification check, not required by protocol, a habit I developed in my second year when a drive I was about to wipe turned out to contain active operational files that had been mislabeled. I had caught it. My supervisor at the time had been grateful enough to never mention it again. The habit stayed. On Wednesday morning, I ran the verification check on drive D7 before initiating the wipe. The file index populated on my screen. I scrolled through it. 14 folders, each one labeled with an operation designation, each one containing the signals intelligence records from that operation. Standard, expected. I had seen hundreds of drives like this. Then I reached folder 11. The label read, Hartley, C, Personnel, Classified. My name, on a drive I had been ordered to destroy. I stopped scrolling. I sat very still for a moment. Then I made two decisions in rapid succession. I did not initiate the wipe, and I did not tell anyone I had stopped. Let me tell you about the drive first. Drive D7 had been logged for destruction 3 days earlier. The destruction order had come through standard channels, signed by my commanding officer, Major Daniel Webb, countersigned by the Data Management Division. Everything correct, everything clean. The drive had been sitting in the secured destruction queue for 3 days. It was my rotation to process the queue that Wednesday. There was nothing remarkable about any of this until I opened the file index. My name in folder 11. I closed the index without opening the folder, not because I was not curious, because I needed to think before I looked. 11 years of signals intelligence work teaches you that the order in which you do things matters as much as what you do. You do not open a file before you understand the context. You do not read a message before you know who sent it and why. I needed to understand why a folder bearing my name was on a drive scheduled for destruction before I understood what was in it. So I sat at my desk and I thought. The drive covered a specific operational period, 18 months of signals intelligence records, a period that included 4 operations I had contributed to directly. If my personnel file had been placed on this drive and the drive was being destroyed, then one of 2 things was true. Either someone had made an administrative error and my file had been mislabeled and placed here by mistake, or someone had deliberately placed my file on a drive scheduled for destruction. Administrative error was possible, but my personnel file would not normally be anywhere near an operational signals drive. Personnel files live in a completely different system. Getting a personnel file onto an operational drive requires deliberate action. Someone had put it there. Someone who had signed a destruction order 3 days later. I picked up my phone. I called Colonel Patricia Morrison. Morrison answered before the second ring had finished. I kept it to 4 sentences. Drive D7 scheduled for destruction. Standard verification check before wipe. My own personnel file in folder 11. Destruction order signed by Major Webb 3 days ago. The silence that followed lasted 8 seconds. Then Morrison spoke with the specific efficiency of someone who had been doing this work long enough to move immediately when movement was required. She told me not to touch the drive, not to log the destruction as complete, not to speak to Webb or anyone in the Data Management Division. She would have someone with me within 90 minutes. Before she ended the call, she said one more thing. She said the folder. Did I open it? I had not. She said, "Good, don't. Not yet, not without a witness." The object at the center of everything was not the hard drive. It was folder 11. I did not open it for 93 minutes, the time between Morrison's call and the arrival of her investigator. Those 93 minutes were the longest of my professional life. Not because I was frightened, because I am a signals intelligence officer, and I had spent 11 years training myself to sit with incomplete information without filling in the gaps prematurely. I knew my name was in a folder on a drive being destroyed. I did not know what the folder contained. I could construct a dozen explanations, some of them benign, most of them not. I constructed none of them. I made tea. I reviewed 2 unrelated work files. I responded to an administrative email about next month's training schedule. I was completely normal for 93 minutes. That is the discipline, not the absence of fear, the decision to act normally until you have the information required to act otherwise. Morrison's investigator arrived at 11:47. His name was David Park, civilian, IG office. He carried a forensic analysis kit in a case that looked like a laptop bag and said very little until he had reviewed the drive's metadata. The metadata told him the drive's complete history, every time it had been accessed, every time a file had been added or modified, every credential used. He worked for 22 minutes. Then he turned to me and said 3 things. The drive had been accessed 6 days ago by a credential that did not belong to anyone in the data management division. Folder 11 had been created during that access. It had not existed before. The credential used belonged to a system account that had been officially decommissioned 14 months ago. A ghost credential, one that should not have been able to access anything. Someone had used a dead system account to place a folder bearing my name on a drive 3 days before it was scheduled to destruction. We opened folder 11 together. The folder contained 47 documents. David Park photographed every page before either of us read a word. Protocol, evidence preservation before analysis. Then we read. The documents were fabricated. I understood this within the first 3 pages, not because they were poorly made. They were well made, convincing to someone who did not know the operational details they purported to describe, but I had been present for the operations they described. And the documents described things that had not happened. Signals intelligence reports attributed to me that I had not written. Assessments that reached conclusions I had never reached. One document that appeared to show me accessing a classified system I had no authorization to access. 47 documents building a case against me. For what, I did not yet know, but someone had built a file of fabricated evidence bearing my name and placed it on a drive scheduled for destruction. Which meant one of 2 things. Either the destruction of the drive was the point, my file was meant to be destroyed along with it, quietly, without anyone ever knowing it had existed, or the destruction was a contingency. The file was meant to be found first, used, and then destroyed to remove the evidence of its fabrication. I looked at David Park. He was already on his phone to Morrison. I want to pause here, because sitting in that room with 47 fabricated documents bearing my name and understanding that someone had built a case against me with enough care to almost make it convincing is the moment this story became something I had not anticipated. If you have ever found evidence that someone was building something against you before you knew you needed to look, drop a comment below. And subscribe right now, because what Morrison found when she traced the Ghost Credential and what it connected to is the part that changes everything. The investigation ran for 4 months. Morrison's team traced the Ghost Credential within the first week. It connected to a server access log that connected to a physical terminal, that connected to a specific room on a specific base on a specific date. The room had a security camera. The camera had recorded 11 minutes of footage on the date in question. The footage showed a person at the terminal. The person was Major Daniel Webb, my commanding officer, the man who had signed the destruction order for Drive D7. Webb had used a decommissioned system account to access the drive, had created Folder 11, had placed 47 fabricated documents inside it, had then signed the destruction order 3 days later. The question Morrison's team spent 4 months answering was why. The answer was in the operations, the 4 operations I had contributed to during the drive's 18-month window. 2 of those operations had generated signals intelligence that implicated a network of contractors in financial irregularities. The intelligence had been filed, assessed, passed upward through the chain. It had not resulted in any action, because somewhere above me in the chain, someone had decided it would not. Webb was connected to that someone, not directly, through 2 intermediary relationships that took 4 months to trace. The fabricated file in Folder 11 was not meant to destroy me. It was meant to discredit me, to create a record that could be used to challenge my credibility if I ever raised questions about why the intelligence had not been acted upon. Someone had decided I might eventually ask why, and had prepared an answer that would make anything I said easier to dismiss. They had not prepared for a standard verification check. They had not prepared for a habit I had developed in my 2nd year on the job. Webb was arrested in the 5th month. The charges covered the fabricated documents, the Ghost Credential access, his connection to the broader network of financial irregularities the original intelligence had identified. His cooperation was partial, enough to reduce his sentence, but not enough to fully protect the people above him. 2 of those people were investigated separately. 1 resigned before charges were filed. The investigation into that resignation is ongoing. The contractors connected to the financial irregularities were charged civilly. 3 of them settled. 2 are still contesting. Webb is serving 7 years. The intelligence I had filed during those 4 operations, the signals records that had identified the irregularities, they were finally acted upon. 14 months late, but acted upon. The hard drive, Drive D7, was not destroyed. It was secured as evidence, every file on it, including Folder 11. The 47 fabricated documents are in the evidence archive now, Exhibit 9 through 55. My actual personnel file, the real one, shows no connection to any of the fabricated records. My record is clean. It was always clean. Someone had just decided it might be useful later if it were not. They had been almost right about almost everything. Almost. I still run the verification check before every destruction. Still not required by protocol. Still a habit from my 2nd year. My current supervisor asked me about it once. Why the extra step? What I was looking for. I told him the truth. I said I was looking for anything that should not be there. He said that was a good habit. I said it had been useful once or twice. He did not ask further. That was fine. Some habits do not require explanation. They just require continuing. Here is what a folder in a file index taught me. The verification check was not required. No one had asked me to do it. No protocol demanded it. My supervisor in my 2nd year had been grateful I had done it, but had never told me to make it standard. I had made it standard myself, because I had decided that complete was better than fast, that one extra step between receiving an order and executing it was worth the time it cost. That extra step found my name on a drive being destroyed. That extra step gave Morrison the call she needed. That extra step gave the investigation the starting point it required. One habit, developed in year 2, maintained for 9 years without anyone asking why. It matters. The things you do because you decided they were worth doing, not because anyone required them, those are the things that hold when everything else is being managed. Do the extra step every time, even when nothing is wrong, especially when nothing seems wrong. Drop a comment and tell me your story. I read every single one. And subscribe. I am here every week with a new story. She noticed, she documented, she made the call, and she did not stop until it was done.